Okay. So I'll go ahead and get started as people are still rolling in. My name is Boris Rensky. I'm a co-founder of Mirantis.
Ready to unlock the secrets of making money? Discover a wealth of free guides and software. Click the links in the video description below to access invaluable resources for generating income, building passive streams, and achieving financial freedom. Don't hesitate, click now and start your journey to financial success.
And today we'll be talking about making money on OpenStack. Judging by fairly thin attendance, I can say that this is really a problem that bothers the community very deeply. But I'd like to start with a little bit kind of a detour and talk about my credibility with respect to ability to speak on this matter. So as many of you might have guessed, I originally am from Russia. I was born in communist Russia back in '81. And if you were to come to the communist Russia back in '81, this is kind of a typical picture that you would see. So what this is it's a piece of crap Russian car called Lada, a marvel of the Russian automotive industry. It barely drives. Probably 8 times out of 10 it wouldn't even start. And the reason I decided to put it up there is to just kind of I think it somewhat symbolizes the quality of life that people had to kind of sustain back in those days. And naturally, nobody had any money, lines to buy bread, things like that. So naturally, when in the early *90s, a lot of opportunities opened up after communism fell. Everybody jumped at the opportunity, and the way people did it is they weren't really so much bothered about building a disruptive product or changing the world. People jumped at the opportunity of just making money quickly. The shortest path to most money is what most people pursued. And now, if you come and visit Moscow today, what you will see is this. And I mean, to some extent, I think, and this is actually a real picture, and I don't think that's anything, it's not even special. If any of you have been to Moscow, you will actually see a lot of these things. You just need to roam around the city for a couple of days. To some extent, it maybe is a testament that sometimes this kind of mentality can work and can be effective. And I, as somebody who's been exposed to this transition, and as a Russian person in generally, have naturally inherited some of that, I want to make money fast type of approach to dealing with things. And on a completely unrelated note, I'm a board member of the OpenStack Foundation, and as such, it's my duty to attempt and evangelize OpenStack around the world. And when you hear most people trying to evangelize OpenStack today, the common words that I hear coming out of their mouth is, it's a great community. Let's get together. Let's build the best open cloud ever. Let's get together, do kind of meetups and drink beer and write Python code. And when I listen to all of this, I kind of I imagine this immediately, which is just a bunch of nerds writing Python code, which for me, as a guy that comes from Russia, with that money mentality, is not very motivating to contribute anything to OpenStack. So what the kind of a point of this whole presentation is to motivate everybody to look at OpenStack through a slightly different prism, and that is a prism of making money. So when I think of OpenStack, I think of this: fat stacks of cash that I can make leveraging OpenStack ecosystem. So now, hopefully, I've convinced you that I'm a credible person to talk about it. Let's dive into it. So there are 4 key questions that we need to answer that effectively are relevant to making money on OpenStack. The first question is there money in OpenStack in general? Second is how much money is there? Why OpenStack potentially is a better vehicle to make money than the alternative stacks or alternative technologies that you might want to kind of invest in. And naturally, the most important question is how is it that you make that money? it's really, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. It's a simple question. If I was presenting at a beer convention, probably I would talk about it a lot. But here, most of you probably already believe that this is the case. Anyway, we can run through the logic really quickly. The logic goes something as follows. Cloud is big, a lot of money getting invested in cloud, everybody knows it. Cloud is open, a little bit trickier one, but we'll talk about it. And third, OpenStack is the king of the open cloud ecosystem, which if you put all of these premises together, ultimately translates to probably a good opportunity being there. So cloud is big, everybody knows it. This is actually the data that I pulled off the cloud scaling blog. Randy Bias did the analysis of the Amazon Web Services growth and Rackspace growth, 100% year-on-year growth in infrastructure as a service clouds. I mean, these are kind of impressive statistics, a lot of money being poured in, everybody writing about it. No doubt it's big. Cloud is open. So this one is a little bit more interesting because it's a little bit less understood. So when it comes to kind of a cloud paradigm, I think that we're in an interesting territory. Because if you look at the application infrastructure kind of a industry's history, the general trend historically has been that open and open source has been just a cheap alternative to proprietary. Typically, the way the industry would move forward, somebody would come up with some disruptive technology. They'll disrupt the market. They'll make a lot of money disrupting it. They'll corner the market, and then some open source alternative will appear that is probably less feature rich, and it's really kind of an attempt to recapture the market that's already been created by somebody else. When it comes to cloud, the picture completely flips because cloud is kind of a baby of the open to a large extent. I mean, cloud has essentially been born, the term cloud has been pioneered, I think, as we use it today in reference to infrastructure clouds by Amazon. But the idea of cloud, as a lot of people in infrastructure space think of it today, is really kind of a byproduct of the consumer internet revolution. A lot of companies that had to deal with running applications at massive scale had to completely rethink how they build out their infrastructure stack. They understood that if you were to go the traditional enterprise approach, the license fees that they would have to pay to VMware and Oracle would far outpace the revenue or money that they could ever make. So they built this completely new kind of open infrastructure. It's either proprietary things that they open sourced or the open source things, existing things that they pulled in. Ultimately, the bottom line here is that they don't pay license fees to anybody. And they've kind of paved the path for the cloud, and everybody followed. Amazon, actually opened up their infrastructure and started selling it as a service, which is where cloud came from, and this is kind of the cloud. And the third premise, again, a lot of people don't like when I talk about it, but I am of the subjective opinion that OpenStack has won the open cloud wars. This is a slide that Josh McKenty from Piston likes to show, average number of developers in an IRC channel. This is data as of June 18th of this year. But the point is that if you look at just the sheer size of the ecosystem, the number of people that are attending the OpenStack Summit, the number of people involved, it is substantially larger than any other ecosystem that is kind of in the same space. Another statistic is the just size of the foundation, the amount of money that's been committed by the sponsors to the foundation. It is the second largest open source foundation, only after Linux itself, which operates at OpenStack Foundation $6 million a year operating budget. Linux is 9.6. So let's try to tackle a different question, a more interesting question, and that is how much money is there in OpenStack. So the first thing to look at is actually, what do we mean by money? Money is spent on infrastructure different ways. Services, hardware, and software is where most of it. This is the kind of a pie chart representing the traditional IT enterprise IT spend as it relates to those three categories. So if you look at any kind of subsegment of the enterprise IT market, there are kind of components that are split between services, hardware, and software in there. So there's many ways to analyze it, and I'm not going to try to convince you that my way is the best. And I think that the point of the exercise is not even to get to the exact number. The point of the exercise is to kind of ballpark it, to understand. Are we talking about, $1 million, $10 million, $1 billion, $1 trillion? One way to look at it is to look at the existing market that's there. So kind of OpenStack is in a new path, but we can try to ballpark it by looking at the market that OpenStack's displacing. So that market right now is largely dominated by VMware, at least when it comes to virtualization. There we go. VMware owns roughly 60% of the market. If you look at VMware annual report, they have a line item there that specifically says cloud infrastructure licenses. So this is how much licensed software they sell that goes into the cloud infrastructure bucket. That's $1.6 billion for 2011. If that's 60% of the market, we could say that maybe $2.7 billion is the total license component of the cloud infrastructure market. And if you were to add services and hardware to that, leveraging the pie chart from the previous slide, you can ballpark it at about $15 billion. Again, the point is that nobody really knows how big this market is exactly. The best we can do is the ballpark, but everybody kind of understands that the market is very nice. So why is it better to spend your efforts trying to make money on OpenStack than on Eucalyptus or CloudStack or VMware? Those are fairly viable ecosystems as well. VMware is definitely a much bigger ecosystem, so why OpenStack? The answer boils down to the fact that unlike all the other ecosystems, OpenStack was kind of put together by its original founding members with the idea to create the ecosystem. Instead of creating just a piece of software that is open source, that is going to be backed by some one vendor, it was envisioned as an ecosystem from day one. And the idea is that it's going to be an ecosystem that will have a kind of a even balance between a lot of participants. There's not going to be any one vendor protruding, and nobody's really going to be the second citizen to somebody else. It started by the community. It's being marketed jointly by the community and all the participants. And really the goal of the ecosystem is to enable all the participants to kind of make money on that ecosystem. If you look at the alternatives, I mean, they're all about a single vendor. So they're all started by a single vendor. The goal is to create the ecosystem around which the single vendor can reap the benefits. And it's impossible to be a Eucalyptus player, yet be better at Eucalyptus than Eucalyptus. And it goes the same way for CloudStack, and it goes the same way for VMware. So it's much harder. And the idea behind the idea behind kind of even open sourcing some of these products to begin with, in my opinion, is not so much about creating the community, but about kind of throwing this veil of no vendor lock-in. So vendor lock-in is this issue that a lot of people are concerned about. I want to have no vendor lock-in, and a lot of people just kind of tend to associate no vendor lock-in with open source. So if you're open source, no vendor lock-in, you're good. So if you take Eucalyptus or you take CloudStack, you make it open source, you make it even Apache, even better. It's open source, definitely no vendor lock-in, and that's the end goal. Less so to really create the ecosystem. And that's just my personal opinion. So now the most important and interesting question, and that's how do you actually get the money that's out there? So you can kind of split this up into a series of sub-questions. And the first question is, who do you actually sell to? To be able to make money, naturally, you have to understand who your customer is. And for OpenStack, this kind of changes as the ecosystem evolves. So what I tried to do is I tried to put together this simple graph. On the y-axis, we have kind of the risk of adopting OpenStack. And by adopting here, I'm speaking kind of adoption in a broad sense. It can either be deploying it if you are an enterprise, or it can be actually starting to try to integrate your products with it if you're an infrastructure vendor. It can be a lot of things, but basically touching OpenStack. So what is the risk? And not so surprisingly, the risk over time goes down. I specifically plotted the time, 2010, when OpenStack was first started, and 2017 is kind of a long enough horizon for us to kind of be able to see the whole cycle of adoption. So the first year when OpenStack was started initially, it was a lot of, it is true, it was a lot of vendor-driven hype. It was a lot of vendors that felt that maybe they're a little bit late in the cloud game, that attaching themselves to the OpenStack bandwagon is a good strategy, and they started investing a lot of money in integrating their existing solutions with OpenStack in some way, so that as OpenStack ecosystem develops and there is market pull, their solutions get pulled in. Some companies just would build drivers to have storage work with Nova Volume. Some companies would build an entire strategy that would be kind of more all-encompassing. But the bottom line is it's infrastructure vendors like HP, like Cisco, like IBM that started spending money on doing something with OpenStack, and that's really been kind of the exclusive trend for the first year, at least as we at Mirantis have observed it. And a lot of our early customer base is exactly from that segment. Now, the second part of it is service providers and internet application vendors, and this is where we are today, I think, and this is where we will remain for a little while. So we'll go over kind of the motivations of each of these potential customer segments in subsequent slides. And the third, and I don't think anybody argues with it, the most conservative adopters is the enterprise. I personally don't think that there's been any significant adoption of OpenStack or any cloud platform, so to speak, in enterprise at all whatsoever right now. And I think that we're looking at the horizon past 2014 for some real adoption to take place. So, if you try to layer kind of the sizes to this subsequent, to this kind of market segments, then naturally the infrastructure vendor is going to be doing most of the stuff themselves. Maybe they'll buy some services. They spend a little bit of money. Tackling a little bit more of a strategic problem for the service providers and internet application vendors, so a little bit more money. And the common thinking is that it's the enterprise, that's when the big bucks start rolling in. So let's look at each one of these in a little bit more detail. Infrastructure vendors, what's the use case? Why the infrastructure vendors really spending money on this? Like I said, to basically not get commoditized and to ride the cloud hype. You want to differentiate around cloud. You want to integrate with OpenStack, and that's really the use case that a lot of them are kind of trying to solve for. So what is it that you can sell to each one of the segments? So if it comes to infrastructure vendors, the only thing you can really sell to infrastructure vendor is services. It's unlikely that you can kind of bundle your OpenStack and sell it to an infrastructure vendor. It's unlikely that you can sell OpenStack support to somebody like HP, for instance. And the original kind of first year wave is pretty much exclusively services driven. As we move into the service providers, internet application vendors, there are two different use cases. One use case for service providers, another one for internet application vendors. But I bundled them together into the same bucket because I think that from the standpoint of adoption, for both of these categories, it is happening at the same time. So for service providers, naturally the use case is, hey, cloud is big. Amazon found a pot of gold. We want to do the same. Let's build Amazon. Let's use OpenStack for it. So that's kind of the general, the bottom lining for service providers. Internet application vendors, most of the use cases we've seen so far are kind of twofold. One is dev test scenario. Build a cloud to in a kind of continuous deployment environment, which would integrate with OpenStack, and you can do your development more efficiently. But the more interesting scenario, and this kind of maps very well onto the WebEx case study, which is WebEx is the second largest SaaS vendor in the world we're presenting. So they fall into the second bucket, and that bucket is trying to replace kind of their spaghetti-like infrastructure that has haphazardly evolved over the course of the company's evolution with something that is more or less standard. So not every SaaS vendor or internet application vendor was as smart about building their infrastructure as Google, for instance. So they were kind of gradually evolving it, patching and stuff like that as their solution was getting adopted. And a lot of them today have ended up with this kind of very weird kind of spaghetti-like infrastructure that is not very central. We have pieces of VMware, pieces of other open infrastructure solutions, and they have to kind of develop and build their application level logic against this weird infrastructure. It's very hard to maintain, and OpenStack is potentially a standard that can replace it. So let's kind of do a project and step by step replace all of this weird infrastructure with something that's going to be one beautiful and elegant solution. So what can you sell to these guys? Again, I think that most of the stuff that you can sell to these guys is services, but we are seeing the emergence of some possibilities for selling some of the products. You would not be able to package OpenStack and sell your own distro of OpenStack, in my opinion, to a service provider or guys like WebEx. But you can kind of find some components that might be of value to those organizations, which they'll be willing to pay you, a subscription for, or kind of a support-like model that will, solve things for them. So we're kind of starting to see some emergence of, opportunities to build a leveraged business model at this stage. And finally, the enterprises. Again, I don't think we are really there yet. I think we're just scratching the surface at this point. From the standpoint of the enterprise, the use case for something like OpenStack naturally is, embrace the new paradigm of open, efficient infrastructure versus the old paradigm of, database automation infrastructure that is largely powered by VMware. So displace VMware is really the bottom line. And what you can sell to enterprises, you can sell pretty much everything, because unlike for the two categories that we talked about in the past, for enterprises, for most enterprises anyway, the IT or application infrastructure component of IT is rarely seen as a core competence, and they're willing to pay money to third-party vendors to solve their problems for them in that space. So you can sell engineering services, you can sell managed services, for instance, like what Rackspace is trying to do with their private cloud model. Just build a cloud and we'll operate the cloud for you inside your firewall. You can sell support subscription like Red Hat does it. You can sell a whole bunch of tools around, such as monitoring tools, deployment tools, et cetera, and you can sell appliances and hardware. So you can imagine selling something like a vBlock only running OpenStack, for instance. I'm sure that enterprises might be interested in that. So the question that I have, and I don't have an answer for it, but the question that I have, and I think that's worth pondering, is that in the earlier slide we made this assumption that the money is in the enterprise market. But we see two trends. First trend is enterprises being very slow at adopting the new paradigm of infrastructure, the cloud paradigm, and we consciously pushed them off into 2014, 2017 time frame. And the second trend is that as time passes, what we're observing is that enterprises are really less and less interested in really spending money on building out their own internal IT infrastructure as it pertains to the infrastructure layer, definitely. So the good trends to look at is just the complete obliteration of the on-premise enterprise software with the SaaS model. So on-premise enterprise software is dead. Everybody in the enterprise software market agrees with it. It's simply not growing, and SaaS software is just taking off and expected to grow even faster. And given that about 50% of the enterprise infrastructure spend is somehow attached to the enterprise software spend, ultimately that means that enterprise is going to be spending less money on building out their own infrastructure. Another trend that is kind of puzzling, or not puzzling, but kind of pointing in the same direction, is the adoption of AWS, so infrastructure as a service solutions. And if you put these two trends together, enterprises being really slow and being kind of at the tail end of adopting cloud infrastructure, and the other trend is this tendency of enterprises to spend less on their internal infrastructure to begin with. The question is really how much money is going to be there in that market when enterprises are finally ready to adopt cloud-like infrastructure at mass. And again, I don't have an answer for it, but I think it's something worth thinking about. So moving on to the next section, let's talk a little bit about the ecosystem. We've covered the theory part of how potentially one could make money in OpenStack. Another good exercise to do is to look at how other companies are trying to make money in OpenStack. So I like to think of it in terms of scale. If you look at the entire OpenStack ecosystem, you can align almost all companies along a certain scale. And on one side of that scale, you will have companies that are trying to kind of attach themselves to OpenStack ecosystem. But on the other hand, their message is more of a traditional kind of a proprietary message. So they're easy to adopt, very kind of out of the box. Just take me, push the button, and it magically works. But there's a lot of proprietary components, and you maybe have to buy hardware licenses. On the other side of the scale are the companies that are kind of more embracing the OpenStack momentum, the open part of it, and saying, OK, OpenStack is a platform. Maybe we'll sell you services. Maybe we'll sell you some tools. But we're not going to be selling anything proprietary. And if you look at the existing ecosystem, you can have these 4 camps. There's a hardware camp, software camp, support camp, and system integration camp. Hardware camp largely kind of erring on the proprietary side. System integration services camp being on the open side of it. And the players align something like this. And let's just move forward and examine each one of these sub-camps in a little bit more detail. So the hardware camp. And I'm not making a statement that one camp necessarily is better than the other here. I'm just saying that they have different properties, and all of them will map differently in terms of their ability to sell against that OpenStack maturity curve that we looked at. Hardware camp, it's very much aligned with enterprise buying patterns. Enterprises like buying solutions that are out of the box and complete and a kind of simple and push button, and they're there. They buy hardware. There's a big existing market for it. You can sell for channel. You can build a leveraged business model. So the upside of being in that camp is fairly sizable. The cons of that camp is that it's very hard to penetrate the market because enterprises are used to buying from their incumbent hardware vendors as it comes to infrastructure. It's known to be very segmented. And it requires a fairly significant R&D investment up front to really put together a piece of hardware or software that runs on it. Just a lot of things you have to put together to make them work and make them work nice. Some of the key players in the camp, Nebula, which maybe most of you, well, I'm sure most of you know. Their positioning is, we are the iPhone of the cloud. So they're like the Uber guys on the Uber proprietary side. They're, it's like a magic box that runs some magic software that is somewhat OpenStack, but unclear how OpenStack it is. And you plug in your infrastructure to it, and you orgasm as you see it turn into a cloud. In the hardware camp, moving a little bit to the open side, you have another player called Morph Labs, also hardware, but their plays like best performance, price performance, commodity components, and they're generally kind of more open. So they're more aligned with the open message. And naturally, you have all the incumbents. Everyone has their own approach, but they're all there, and they're trying to ride the OpenStack wave to somehow creatively package bundle solutions that somehow tie together with OpenStack. Software camp, it's pretty much the pros and cons of it are really just less pronounced pros and cons of the hardware camp, I think. It's a little bit less of an R&D investment. You can still build a leveraged business model. The cons is that it's somewhat hard to penetrate that market because enterprises are not used to buying pistons. They are used to buying VMware. And they're not used to buying cloud. They're used to buying data center automation. So you have to invest a lot of money to change that mentality. And it's enterprise sales process, expensive and hard. Although you can sell through VARs, you can't expect VARs to ever create demand for you. So they might help resell maybe pieces of hardware with your software bundled into it, but unless everybody knows about it and wants to buy it to begin with, you won't see guys like Ingram Micro, for instance, selling, OK, this is like a Dell appliance with piston running on it, buy. So as long as somebody's asking for it, they'll give it. But otherwise, the kind of a battle against the existing brand perceptions is on you. To quickly gloss over the key players, so cloud scaling, their angle is we have the OpenStack distro for really large-scale deployments, telcos and large-scale deployments for the enterprises, so large-scale web scale is their angle. Piston, VMware killer, that's kind of their business model. We are the enterprise OpenStack that will kill VMware. SwiftStack exclusively focused on Swift. And StackOps, I think they're based out of Spain. Fairly popular. Their focus up until recently has been on kind of a really small use cases. So if I have like 2, 4 nodes, but I want things to work really quickly and push the button, that's what you get. Now they released the Enterprise Edition, having amassed a good amount of popularity, so it's arguably not a bad play. Support camp, all you see is the incumbents. I won't spend too much time on this one. The points I wanted to underline here is that as we're moving away from the hardware and software camp, we're moving into the paradigm of companies and services that are being offered that, in my opinion, are much better aligned with the existing OpenStack momentum. So existing OpenStack momentum is very much about open. And if you're tying your messaging to OpenStack, you're saying, I am an OpenStack appliance or I am an OpenStack distro. It has to be that you're consistent all the way. Selling hardware and licensed software with the OpenStack message is a little bit hard. But doing something like a Red Hat support model with OpenStack, that I can imagine kind of working because that is simply, it's aligned with people's perceptions. So when they come to OpenStack, they have certain perceptions. And when you tell them, we'll sell you support, it makes sense. If you tell them, we're going to sell you software license, it makes less sense. Key players, like I said, the incumbents. Most of you probably know the positioning. Canonical, they are the Linux for the cloud. All of the cloud providers and all the guests in the cloud are all Ubuntu Linux. That's the messaging. Red Hat, naturally, we own the enterprise. We own the open source ecosystem. We're gonna conquer the world of OpenStack now. And SUSE's their angle is Linux for mission-critical applications, such as, for example, I think like 70% of SAP workloads run on SUSE and a lot of other mission-critical stuff. So they're mission-critical angle. Rackspace is also somewhat in this camp. At least until recently, their messaging has been fanatical support. We are the hosting company that does fanatical support, but it doesn't matter if we're doing fanatical support on hosting. We can also do fanatical support on supporting your software. So that's kind of been the angle. They're slightly moved away from this at this point, but I think kind of the general messaging is still largely the same. And the SI camp, you sell services. Some pros is that you can start monetizing immediately. So as soon as you sell your first account, you start making money. It naturally makes full use of OpenStack momentum because you're not introducing any kind of products or agendas that might conflict with the existing kind of incumbent OpenStack messaging. And the good thing also is that you get exposed to a lot of opportunities, and you can learn about customers' buying patterns as they relate to the OpenStack ecosystem as you engage in real projects. The big 2 cons of this approach is that business scales linearly. There's no way to build a leveraged business model on services. And this business is very short-lived because eventually it will get commoditized. And that'll be the end of our OpenStack value in the context of a services play. So I'd like to kind of close by sharing the Mirantis story. We've talked about kind of the theory of making money on OpenStack. We looked at how other players are trying to make money on OpenStack, at least as you look at them from the outside in. And now I can share with you the story of how we try to make money on OpenStack. And that's kind of a story from inside out. So the story is fairly simple, and it goes something as follows. Before OpenStack started, and before we got deeply involved in it about 18 months ago, we were somewhat of a generic application infrastructure services company. Anything that's cool in application infrastructure, such as big data or Eucalyptus, Cloud.com, Solar, and Lucene, we get our hands on and we try to kind of build buckets of expertise. And we're able to more or less sustain the business and make money that way. When OpenStack came about, we said, ooh, another cool thing. How about we play with that? We played with it. It was bare release, actually. What we did is we took it and we deployed private cloud for our internal IT. I mean, the bare release was buggy, it was horrible, it was not easy to do. But we did like the kind of the layered architecture approach. And we also liked, naturally, the amount of market hype and community momentum that was there. So we said, OK, we want to explore this a little bit further. So what I did is I called Mark Collier, who is now the CEO of the OpenStack Foundation, and said, hey, we kind of want to get involved and see if we can explore this further. Mark was at Rackspace then. He was a very busy guy. He said, I don't know you, Boris. Don't talk to me. Talk to Lauren Sell. She deals with fools like you. So I talked to Lauren, and Lauren said, OK, what you guys should do is, if you want to get involved, how about you make a meetup, the Bay Area local meetup for OpenStack. We have a kind of a hacker meetup, she said, but we really want to do a business-oriented meetup that is focused on kind of the business ecosystem and potential end users. That's an opportunity for you. How about you do this? So we said, yay, let's do this. And we figured we're going to do a kind of a meetup of 20 people showing up. Got a small room. We ended up with 120 people showing up and had to upgrade the room 2 times. And shortly after the meetup, some interesting things started happening. Kind of the ecosystem learned a little bit that there is a company that is doing services in OpenStack. So we started literally getting inbound interest. Randy Bias, whom some of you may know, called and said, oh, you guys do services around OpenStack. Can you please help us out? We do a lot of OpenStack stuff. We could really use a partner. And then Ray O'Brien, who is a CIO at NASA at a time, who ran the Nebula project, called us. And he said, hey, Boris, I see you doing OpenStack stuff. All of my guys left to do their own startups, like Nebula and Piston. And I don't have anybody to support my OpenStack infrastructure. Do you guys know anything about it? Can you help me out? So I said, yes. And then some other people from Nexenta that you don't know have also called us and said, OpenStack is cool, and we want to integrate with it. Do it for us. And these are not the only 3, but that kind of gives you the trend. So we started looking at it, and I came to the rest of the company shareholders, and I said that, guys, this is kind of an interesting trend. How about we now focus on OpenStack? And they looked at it and said, no, it's too risky, it's too narrow, bad idea. We'll be cloud services company. We won't be an OpenStack company. And I said, well, cloud services, that doesn't make any sense. Who's going to buy cloud services? I don't understand it. And they said, well, yeah, that's just because you're young and stupid, so stop talking to us. So what we did is we decided to call a professional marketing consultant, Geva Perry, whom, again, many of you might know. And we asked them, we're seeing some trend here that people want us for OpenStack. What should we do? At the same time, we have all this legacy business. We're doing all this great Hadoop stuff and big data stuff and all that stuff. I mean, we don't want to change our messaging. He said, no. What you should do is you should focus on OpenStack, should make a website that says that you're all OpenStack, buy some Google AdWords to point to the OpenStack stuff, do some more meetups and write some more blogs about OpenStack, and it's going to be cool. So I shared that sentiment, and I kind of brought his recommendation to the management, and they said, oh, now the marketing consultant said it, not you, young, stupid fool. All right, let's do it. So what we did is we changed our website. We bought a bunch of Google AdWords that pointed to it. It was no longer cloud services. It was now OpenStack. And now we kind of grew to be the big kahuna in the OpenStack services. So we are one of the sponsors of the foundation. We arguably, I'm pretty sure that it's true because I know the ecosystem. We are the largest services player in the ecosystem. We have already 70 actually people that are exclusively dedicated to doing OpenStack projects. We've done already at this point close to 30 OpenStack-related projects. Some are for fairly notable customers, such as WebEx that presented a keynote this morning. And we've been growing at about 100% per year since we committed to OpenStack. So that's our story. Thank you. And I'm open to questions if anybody wants to ask them. But you don't have to if you don't. So.
Calling all aspiring moneymakers. Discover a treasure trove of free guides and software to help you make money online and offline. Click the links in the video description below to unlock expert resources for income generation, entrepreneurial mindset, and wealth building strategies. Ready to transform your financial future? Click now and embark on your money-making journey.